Sebile from A Band of Anglers. Very pleased to join you for this video with our partners TackleDirect. For watching this video, please stay tuned at the end for a special offer from TackleDirect. Today I am going to share with you my approach of using soft plastics for targeting striped bass. There are several baits I really want to talk that really are an edge for your and my needs when it comes to fish from the surf for striped bass, and not only for the surf. My main focus be on the surf, but honestly speaking, many of what I'm going to share with you can apply also from boat fishing. But really, the main goal is targeting striped bass and catching them on soft plastics. So there's three different baits that I want to introduce to you today. The very first one is called the Dartspin. The Dartspin, let me show you this guy. Here it is. So the Dartspin is basically a soft plastic body that have a wire in the tail into which is attached a blade, a spinning blade. So thanks to that, we have the benefit of a very strong, very long-lasting soft plastic body that can be rigged in a number of ways, and that really lasts very well compared to regular soft plastic. It's much longer lasting. And you have behind that blade that works at any speed. I mean, from super slow to middle speed to burning speed if you want. And not only the blade provide basically flash, but there's something much more important than that. When the blade of the Dartspin spins in the water, it creates turbulences. And those turbulences are really key because that's the kind of signal that is very, very well felt thanks to the lateral line from predator fish such as the striped bass. And this is why the Dartspin is really a very, very attractive lure that catches fish so well. So that's the first lure I want to focus on, and especially focus on that one because we have a range of size from 3.5 inch, 4.5 inch, 5.5 and even 7 inch that cover a lot of our needs when we target striped bass. The good thing too is that TackleDirect carries basically all the sizes, so you can find the exact size that fits your specific needs. The second bait I want to talk to you about is called the Sandyll. So here it is. So the Sandyll is basically a Sandyll shape lure, a darting head, and that is also made with the same material as the Dartspin is made from, which is the soft tough material, by the way. So that's that very long lasting plastic. It have a lot of vitality, very, very good action. I mean, when you compare a regular soft plastic and you swim, with the same shape, in that case, for example, a Sandyll bait, when you compare the two action, you can see that action have something special. It really kicks a bit more. There's several good lures on the market. So really, I'm not here to say, oh, the other are bad and ours are good. No. There's really some good lures on the market, truly. But that very material that we're using in that Sandyll really adds more kick, more life to it. And also it resists better when you catch fish. So it typically lasts several times longer than a regular soft plastic. And obviously that really matters a lot, right? Now the third bait that will be part of my today's focus of striped bass fishing is really a favorite of mine that's called the Curylyminn. So the Curylyminn have definitely a curly tail that you can see, and that's again made in that soft tough material. So again, there's a number of curly tails on the market that have a good action, really. These have something, there's a little plus into it, if you like, and when you see the action you can tell, oh yeah, it really does have something more. And then again, that soft plastics last longer, allowing you to catch more fish on the same bait, fishing longer, and basically more return on your investment too. And as an angler who's also a conservationist, I like the idea that I can have a soft plastic that can last reasonably as long as it can. Of course, soft plastic is still a soft plastic, it's not a hard lure, so still teeth sensitive, but the soft tough material is less teeth sensitive than most other soft plastic, and that's part of why it lasts longer. The other good benefit of that material, it's buoyant, and there's a number of cases, and we'll go through that when we go into the rigs and the techniques. that buoyancy really also adds a lot into our offer and in the way we can approach fish in different situations. So when the fish are very active and you need fast retrieve, well, it doesn't matter really. But when you're in a situation where fishing have to be made very slow, when the fish are not really biting and you have to scratch the bottom or make those paws and have something that raises up from the bottom, then really having a buoyant soft plastic bait really gives something that's a plus, and that's especially the case in the case of the Curylyminn with that curly tail. When you work on the bottom and you make a pause and then that tail goes up, or even if you want to use it on top water, I'm going to talk about that in not too long, because most of the time you don't think of soft plastic bait for your top water needs, right? Yeah, I guess so. All right, so the second thing I want to go through, I'm going to share with you a number of ways of rigging those baits for a number of situations and techniques, basically. And there's really a lot you can do, and that's good, because you know what helps you to catch fish on the day when the fish are not really very well active, very biting, if you want to say. Well, that's where having a range of options in a way you can rig, in a technique you can use, help you to catch some more fish. Now, of course, location also is key. If you're fishing a spot where there's no fish, well, I guess that would be really hard to get some bites, right? So finding the fish, fishing the right location, and understanding some rigging and some techniques that are fitting especially well those locations is really key to your success as well. So, rigging. Well, there's not many, but a few ways that works best when it comes to targeting the striped bass with soft plastics. So, one of them is definitely using your soft plastic on a wide gap hook. So, wide gap hook are really especially good when it comes to fishing when you have some floating debris, some grass and stuff like that. If you fish in some flats, that have some grass. Many lures, for example, a hard lure with two treble hook will not be able to work properly in those situations. So the wide gap hook is really an interesting way to rig your soft plastic to help you to go through those grass or floating debris. That's definitely one of the best reason of why choosing in certain situations wide gap hook, weighted or not. So one of the benefits you will find with our lures, like in that case, for example, the Dartspin, is that we have holes and slots in the nose, underneath the chin, and also through the body at different locations, and holes also on the back here. So thanks to that, in fact, when you position the hook, you basically simply have to follow the holes that already exist. So most of the time, not always, but the vast majority of the time, you simply position the hook in the right holes. Like in that case, I got that 6/0 wide gap hook, and that just perfectly fit in place. So thanks to that, it means what? It means it's very easy and quick to rig it. Okay, that's not so much of a big deal. You're not in a tournament for largemouth bass fishing with $300,000 to win, right, in a given number of hours. So it's not so much the fact that's quick, which is always cool, of course. It's more the fact that because you follow those holes that already exist, you cannot be wrong. You cannot position the hook wrongly. You're sure to position the hook the right way. Why does it matter? Well, it's very simple. The answer to that is when you rig by hooking yourself the hook into the soft plastics, well, sometimes you may not hook the hook at the right spot. And if the hook is not centered very well on the lure, quite often it will bend the lure. It may bring the lure to spin the water, which may lead to tangle the line or the leader, and typically the lure action is not as good. So that's why a number of people, especially when you don't fish very often and are not used to pay attention to those little details, when you rig your own soft plastic, sometimes you don't rig them very well, very centered, and that leads to some reason why you have less bites than the guys next to you. So with that brand Hyperlastics and lures like the Dartspin or the Sandyll and the Curylyminn, excuse me, you are in a situation where you basically almost cannot be wrong. I mean, if you're wrong, you almost it seems you want to be wrong, right? So it's very easy to position well. So remember, using the wide gap hook, most of all, is really interesting when you're fishing in a situation where you have floating debris or grass. Also in some cases when you fish on the bottom or near the bottom and you have some snag, that also is less like snagless, simply speaking. So those are some of the great reasons and of why using a wide gap hook. So that's a very important way of rigging your soft plastic. Then of course, well, G-heads, hooks, G-heads, the most basic way and most commonly used way of rigging a soft plastic, of course. Again, with our brand here, Hyperlastics, we have those holes in the nose, so you can just follow the hole in the nose when you slide your hook through that. You have a cut in the back in most of our lures here, you see. The reason is not only it makes easier to position properly your hook, it also gives more freedom to the lure in swim action. And when you hook a fish, like for example, when you hook a bluefish, which quite often happen when you target striped bass, right? Well, once the fish is hooked, and the first thing it does, typically fish spit out water, trying to get rid of that thing he got in his mouth, and that brings the body of the lure going outside. And now, as you can see, the hook is most of the time, on the corner of the mouth, and that is not the soft plastic which is in the front line together with the soft plastic, but that's the hook shank, and it's much less likely to damage the bait when you're fishing like this with these lures, and that's part also of why the bait may last longer thanks to that back cut that I design on those baits. Okay, so it's a very simple way to rig your bait, of course, and you can use a wide variety of jig heads, of weight, even different shapes that have different action or swimming level, depending on what you want to do and achieve. Very important. Now, for this kind of rig, and the next one, which is very close, which is basically rigging your soft plastic on a bucktail. In both cases, I will say that use super glue. Use super glue because yes, you can rig right away. And let me grab that super glue that just failed. It's video, but almost live. Why am I highlighting the need of using super glue? I'm sure some of you, of course, know and have been using that for a long time, no matter the soft plastic you're using. Well, it's really to really help that bait to last longer. For those of you who are not used of that, because not only we have holes and slots in different positions in my baits here, the Dartspin, the Sandyll, and the Curylyminn. So not only it's easy and you make sure you rig them properly, we have holes that helps to have a keeper from the hook or the jig head to go in place that even give a much longer lasting hold and grip. But we are talking about saltwater fishing. We are talking about casting, maybe several hundred times, maybe a few thousand times that same bait. And every time you cast, every time you have basically a lot of energy that's been spent on that point that linked the hook to the soft plastic. And the cast alone, especially if you make those kind of snap casts that helps for longer distance, well, that thing alone, little by little, helps to tear apart the soft plastic. And of course, the fish themselves, catching fish and fighting the fish with the fish, shaking the head and stuff like that, and some of them having teeth. Well, also all of that help to damage the bait little by little. So adding a drop of that super glue in that case, that's the one I recommend. Why? Doesn't matter the brand really, but this one have a little brush inside. So you can just take not even one drop, just keep that brush wet and wet a little bit the hook shank and the guard if there's one. That's it. It just needs to be wet. You don't need to put too much. If you put a lot, what will happen when you position the soft plastic on the hook, typically you will have like a drop of that super glue that will exit between the jig head and the soft plastic, and that may, that drop of super glue may go where you don't want it to go, and maybe glue with the next bait or your fingers, the tackle box, whatever. So first, it's not needed to put a lot. It will not hold better, really. So simply wet the hook shank, where it's going to be in contact with the soft plastic in the front part of the soft plastic, and that's it. but I promise you will see that bait will last much longer, will hold the cast much better, will help you to get more fish. I will say realistically, I think it's honest to think and say that you may increase the life of your soft plastic by a good 20-25%, if not more in some case. So it's really worth to have that, you know, teeny super glue thing, the one that have that brush inside. It's much more accurate. You just use what you need at the right spot. It doesn't leak on the side. So it's really a great way. So to go back to the third way, I talk about the jig head, and of course, of course, using a bucktail is very close to a jig head. The main reason why a bucktail is definitely adding help sometimes to your bait, it's those movements from the material here, you know, whether it's a real bucktail or mylar and stuff like that. It adds that action basically in the front of the soft plastic, knowing that the action of all the soft plastic is really coming from the tail. You know, on the Dartspin, that's the blade that works. On the Sandyll, like here, that's the paddle that paddles. On a Curylyminn, that's that curly tail that have that ondulation that's so attractive to fish. That's currently my favorite bait right now. I've done a lot with that. So using your soft plastic on a bucktail kind of puts the best of both worlds. And I know many people knows that using a soft plastic on the bucktail really is extremely efficient. I really strongly recommend that. Why will I use more of a jig head than using a bucktail? There are two main reasons that may help me in that choice. First, if I'm fishing with a light jig head or bucktail and the distance is really key, well, the more you have a streamlined bait and the better you can achieve distance. That might be a reason why in some case, it's a very little reason, honestly speaking, okay? But maybe in some case, if I feel I'm a little bit short on a given spot, well, maybe a jig head will help to increase from a few feet, maybe 5 to 10, but I'm not even sure of that much. So it's one thing. Really, the main reason is more related to cost. So if you're going to be fishing in a very snaggy area and lose a lot of gear, is it better that you have the best enhanced action, which means to put together a bucktail and a soft plastic, or just to go with a jig head, which obviously is typically cheaper for the same size and weight than a bucktail? And that's really where it's a very personal choice. I know if I fish a spot that I know is very bad, that I know for sure I'm gonna lose not a couple of bait a day, but maybe many more, but that's worth it if I know there's a bunch of fish there. Well, I may prefer to go on a jig head, but generally speaking, I really love the association of a bucktail with the soft plastics. So now we talk about the rigging, of those different, the three key different ways of rigging. I want to go through more detail of different way of putting those bait together before going really and in relationship with the techniques. All right, so different rigs linked together with different techniques, really important. That's how you can help in your mind to make the choice that should be the best for the situation you are in, targeting striped bass from the beach. So I want to go first with true rigs, not just a lure on a jig head or a bucktail. I'm really talking about true rigs. The first is that go with a small pencil bait, like in that case that's the flying pencil from Oceanborn. Remove the hooks. Take preferably a super long distance or a sinking model, more likely than floating. Tie your leader in the tail and put a small dart spin, a 3.5 or a 4.5 inch. In that case, this guy is a 3.5. Because I'm sure most of you have experienced those days where striped bass are feeding on incredibly teeny bait. Quite often these are baby squid that are literally so small it's hard to see anything more than a little black dot in the water. And on those days, it's very, very, very hard to have bites on regular lures. It's really tough. And you can see hundreds, maybe thousands of striped bass along the beach having that kind of swirls and feeding, and they're really hard to catch. That's why typically a guy who use fly fishing can succeed as long as he can reach the fish if they are very close from the shore. So this is the way I'm doing that. That's why I like to have a SLD, most likely super long distance model. So one that's weighted in a way that really make that long cast, at least the sinking. In a few cases, maybe if I fish on back bays and flats, very shallow, and if I have the feel from my experience that I need to make some pause sometime, then okay, in that case I may use a floating, but that's a very teeny percentage of the case of where I'm going to be using that rig. So that rig, you know, again, I have that teeny pencil bait, and I have a 4.5 or 3.5 long dart spin. So I can cast very well, because now I have that guy who's, depending on the model, between 1 and 2.5 ounce weight. So that there's really a good amount of weight to make that long cast and reach the fish, because of course that teeny bait alone cannot be cast that far, because quite often the fish are always a bit more far away than close to you, right? So that's why I love that rig. I absolutely love that rig. Now you can make a very good cast, reach the fish, and now you can bring it back. And not only in that case the pencil bait serve as a weight by itself, but also the fact there's water buoyancy, especially the flying models with their wings, that even a heavy one keeps being on the top. So you can make a very long cast and still fish on the very top, and that is really, really good. That is really interesting. That's a very good thing for your needs, and helps to catch a lot of fish, and sometimes really good ones. Sometimes even very good sized striped bass are feeding on very teeny prey. So you may really be very happy of using that rig sometimes. All right, so that's the first rig I really recommend. That's very simple, obviously. You have a leader, I cannot show you, but I will say the very minimum will be 2 feet, up to 5 feet if really you have a very soft, totally flat water, no current, no wind. When the fish might be finicky, in that case you may have that 5 feet long leader, and you may go sometimes super thin, like 15 pounds if the fish are really finicky. I will not really go lighter than that, just in case I hook a really good fish. Okay, as an average I will say 3 to 4 feet is probably the average length for the leader here. All right, so next leader and rig is pretty much the same. Just go, in that case, in that very case I'm showing a heavier, that's also a flying pencil, the special model that have a swivel in the tail. But what's different, a little bit different, but really it's worth to mention it, is that I on the back will have basically a wide gap hook, most likely a weighted wide gap hook. So why that one is especially interesting? Well, because in the first case I was showing the benefit of using that little flying pencil to help you to reach long distance to cast a very teeny bait when stripers are focusing on small prey. But in that case, I may have a pretty large soft plastic, not only the dart spin, but I can have a Curylyminn, I can have a Sandyll, I can put a bigger one. So what is the benefit in that case? Why not just using a hard lure? Well, that's very simple. It goes again to the fact that it's pretty weedless. So when on normal use you have to make your long cast and you're not targeting the early season schooly small stripers but more nice larger fish, you still want to cast far away. But there's a number of cases where you can be fishing and you have floating grass or debris, and in that case when you have a hard lure and you have one hook that's exposed, or one treble hook or two treble hook or more, then as soon as your lure hits that patch of floating debris or that grass, you're snagged. So you can't really fish properly. That's really important. That's why I love to have that rig with me. And that's one thing I'm not telling you that's a new thing to me, not at all. When I was a teenager in France, where the European sea bass, which is a very close relative to the striped bass, it's just much smaller and have no stripes, but everything about that fishing is really the same. That's why when I moved and came in the US, for me, fishing striped bass was just the same thing. It was just on steroids because, well, the fish are potentially much, much larger. But I used the same rig back in the days in France for the same reasons, because when there were grass and floating debris, also in case like, for example, in Montauk and place like that, where you have patch of rocks in front of you on the beach, you still want to make that long cast, and you might be willing to fish pretty shallow because you know the striped bass are there and feeding, and it's a good spot to catch them, and you know there's a lot of snags. Well, this is probably the best thing you can think and dream of, that rig. You can cast that very well. You know, this guy is like 3.5 ounces, so definitely you can make that long cast, or you can choose a smaller one, of course, and lighter one. Depend on your gear, depend on number of factors, but if it's windy, you really want to have that, because you really can make that long cast. And now, on the retrieve, you have that bait that works perfectly, that can glide and bump against heads of rocks and stuff like that, with very, very little risk of snag. I mean, everything can snag at some point, you know, just the line itself, if it goes, you know, in an open oyster and the oyster clamp back, well, it's snag, right? But really, these compared to everything else, including bucktails, that's much less snagging than bucktails. And with that flying pencil special, you make that super long cast that's gonna bring and deliver that bait far away and catch you fish. I mean, it's a very, very, very good, I insist, very, very good way of using a dart spin or a Curylyminn, having that wide gap weighted hook, you know, with that leader 3 to 5 feet long, say, you know, and a flame pencil in front of that. All right, now let me show you what was for years my my number one rig when it comes to targeting European sea bass in Europe, and that was that. That's something you do by yourself. I don't know, I don't think it's sold anywhere. It's very easy to make, honestly. You take that wire of stainless steel, you know, wire, like about cut 8-inch long to make it easy. You make a loop on one side, and then you put a swivel, you put a bead here, then you put those, you know, I don't know exact name, but you have a tube and you have a swivel on it, and then you put another a bead, then you make a second loop that include a swivel, and you have that snap that you had, and now you can have this kind of bullet weight. And of course you attach the leader to this swivel. So in that case, I love to use that like this. You can put a small jig head or a small bucktail, that works very well as well, but I like to show especially with a wide gap hook, and in that case I show it to you with a dart spin, but of course a Curylyminn or a Sandyll will do the job perfectly as well. So now that's the absolute long distance way of using small bait and cast them far away and reach fish far away and cover a lot of water when you fish from the beach. And of course that's also true if you fish from a boat. So again, don't take my say like if it's only an exclusive to beach fishing and surf fishing or shore fishing. That's also true from a jetty, that's also true from a boat, because sometimes from a boat, well, the fish are far away or you want to fish them deeper. What is great about that is you can use the weight that is optimized in your situation. What I mean by that is, do you need to make a very long cast, or do you need to fish deeper, or suddenly do you need to fish with a lighter weight to fish mid-water and stuff like that. So you can adjust to the weight that fits the best. But you know what? You can have in mind that you want it to reach the longest distance, and you still be sure that the lure will work above it, because above the bottom. Because maybe you're fishing in a place that the beach is only, say, 8 feet deep at the deepest, on the longest distance you can cast this thing. So if you have a 4 or 5 ounce, you know that thing is going to drag on the bottom, unless you burn it very fast, which sometimes is the right way to go. Sometimes burn fast is pretty good, in fact. Well, the thing is that when you cast that far away and it goes to the bottom, and you have your more typical slow, medium, or a bit fast, steady retrieve, and if it drags on the bottom, there's enough length here, in fact, that's going to have some kind of angle, and this is going to keep the leader just above the bottom, and your dart spin or your Curylyminn or Sandyll will work perfectly right above the bottom. So it will not hurt the action. This rig, no matter how much weight you put on that, you cast, it angles very, very little. So it's very efficient. Cast very far away, the more far away than anything you can remove, because the weight is re-optimized for the distance. The soft plastic follow behind with as little drag in the air as possible. That's part of why it's so efficient in long distance. And when it hits the water, it delivers the lure where you want it to be, and the lure works behind. And for example, that dart spin is really great, especially if you want to have a very slow retrieve, and that's true also when you use the Curylyminn. So you can cast very far away and have that very slow retrieve. And as you know, for example, in summertime, nighttime with a flat sea, when striped bass are really very difficult to turn on a bite, that's the kind of rig that can help you to catch fish when people around don't catch fish. So I show you that one more time. I guess sometime I will do a video to show exactly how to make it yourself. You see, very, very simple rig, okay? All right, guys. So those were three truly rigs. I mean by truly, there's a full thing here. You see, you have a leader, you have a weight, or you have a pencil bait and stuff like that. So guys, I'm so pleased we just spent that half hour together. So just remember that all size dart spin are currently available at TackleDirect. There's a special deal right now, which is buy 3 get 1 for only a limited amount of time. I think it's for Friday, April 10th to Monday, April 13th. Discover my baits. I promise you, you won't be unhappy with them. They will deliver to you guys. Stay tuned, stay healthy, enjoy fishing, whether you go fishing or you watch videos or live streams. It's all the same at the end. It's because we love that so much, and we're very happy to share that with you and spend time with you guys. Really happy. Stay healthy. Bye-bye.